My name's Chris, and I'm a bookaholic. All right, my friends, so today I want to do something. I don't think I've done this yet. I'd like to do a dedicated review for a book that I recently finished, and I listened to the Audible and really enjoyed it, actually. But the funny thing about this is that I think I enjoyed it maybe more than I thought I enjoyed it. Like, I knew it was a serious book, and I knew it was an important book. If I were teaching English, I would actually require this in some form and fashion. My undergrad is in English literature, and one of the things that I was really good at when I was doing my academic work was kind of reading the body of an author's work and kind of synthesizing down some of the primary points and just how uniquely and kind of regularly oftentimes authors will revisit those important themes, whether you're talking about kind of the introduction of them in short stories and the development of them and their greater, longer works. But this being my first book by John Williams, I'm not 100% sure if this is a regular theme for him. So what I did think at the end of this book was, this is a serious book. It deserves 5 stars. There's not even a doubt. But the last few days, as I've been reflecting on this book, I'm realizing just how incredible this work was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the basic overview of the book and just kind of general impressions. And then I'm going to try to dive into what I think are a couple really interesting themes. Now, again, this is my first introduction to the work, so I'm not doing a professional analysis, but I do think that this is the kind of work that you could revisit this and reread this a number of times and find that it is just kind of putting the finger on the pulse of a lot of things that we all feel and experience as human persons. So let's jump in. William Stoner is born at the end of the 19th century into a dirt-poor Missouri family, farming family. Sent to the state university to study agronomy, he instead falls in love with English literature and embraces a scholar's life, so different from the hard Scrabble existence he has known. And yet, as the years pass, Stoner encounters a succession of disappointments. Marriage into a proper family estranges him from his parents. His career is stymied. His wife and daughter turn coldly away from him. A transforming experience of new love ends under the threat of scandal, and driven ever deeper within himself, Stoner rediscovers the stoic silence of his forebears and confronts the essential solitude. Okay, I think that actually there's some things about just that basic overview that I would want to almost kind of refine a little bit. Let's start with the beginning. I'm a sucker for kind of this, almost Midwest farming families in the middle of nowhere. This is, of course, basically pre-World War I. They're very poor, and somehow or another, they've scraped together enough to send William Stoner to university. And actually, there was this one kind of moment where the mother takes her egg money and helps him buy a proper suit, if I recall. Now, it's not a lot of money, but this is a time period where a little bit of money would go a long way. So the family scrapes and they put together enough for him to go to university. The parents are willing to send him along to university because the possibilities of learning more about agriculture and its contribution to the family, it was an investment for mom and dad to send that child to school. So he goes with the parents' blessings. And what you almost feel like from the beginning with this story is that William Stoner is almost just accidentally placed from situation to situation. There's really very little interest and drive on his part. His parents are encouraging him and opening the doors for him to go to school. He goes. He gets to school. He's very lackluster, really ultimately, he doesn't like the agriculture classes. He's not really interested in the development of, really the farm back home. He finds that there's a little bit of interest in the English literature kind of arena. But the funny thing about that is that even there, I'm not even 100% sure he's terribly captivated and interested in that. I mean, he finds it far more interesting falling in stride and in step with taking on the family farm and business. At least there's some sort of kind of intrigue, at least enough for William Stoner to become invested in it. And he ultimately, through the aid of a teacher, makes the decision that I'm not going to return and go back to the family business. I'm going to stay here. And ultimately what he decides is that he's going to go on for doctoral work. But around this time, there's a lot happening where there is an invitation for young men to join the war. And so he concludes that's not what he's going to do, even though basically he's got friends in his life who are very passionate about going and fighting for freedom. World War I unfold and his friends go off, and a very close friend loses his life. The juxtaposition with his friend who's passionate to go off to war with William Stoner, who's really almost, again, reluctantly staying to do doctoral work in a field that you're not even 100% sure that he's passionate about. Now, he's interested enough and he's good enough that he can go on and get a degree, and an advanced degree. But is he passionate and excited about it? Now, the friend who's passionate goes off to war and immediately is killed in action. And those who have not gone and died in the war are processing that grief to a degree. But again, William Stoner, it doesn't seem like it is a prevalent obsession for him, or an overwhelming, there's not an overwhelming need for him to process this grief, it seems. I mean, it's a little bit distanced and disconnected from him. So he finishes his degree and then almost, accidentally is asked to teach an English class, which he agrees to, and he does so. At the end of his doctoral work, of course, he's got the credentials in order to, pursue the life of a professor. And in light of the fact that he has a book that's potentially coming out, they put him into a full professorship and with the possibility of tenure. And so you begin to see now William Stoner, once the student, now becoming the professor. And he does a really pretty good job at teaching, and it seems like his students are appreciative of his efforts. Stoner finds himself in a scenario in which he is introduced to a woman who will become his wife, and you almost wonder, why are they getting married? I mean, there is an attraction on his part, but is it a passion? And then she has a somewhat of a reluctance almost, but a willingness. There's almost like again, we accidentally just got married. They begin a relationship in which it just seems to be two people who barely know how to live with one another. They don't even know ultimately who they are, let alone an ability to give themselves to one another and grow together as a couple. You see his wife begin to become a little bit interested in the possibility of having children. And so for a brief period of time, there seems to be a spark of passion. They find out they're going to have a child. And the only other thing that seems to initiate a spark of passion is the possibility of getting a house for her. But otherwise, in his life, Stoner's wife is almost a side entity, someone who has zero interest in being a part of his life, and his attempts of being a part of her life are rejected. There's such a rigidity there. In fact, the marital night can't even be consummated because there's such a rigidity. She has zero receptivity and zero interest in consummation. And you could easily argue, well, she's inexperienced and doesn't know anything about this, but it's more than that. It's like she is almost almost like a repulsion to this kind of intimacy. What you have is like two different worlds that never collide. And even in their union, there's zero intimacy. And you almost wonder, does William Stoner have the ability to have a relationship that is intimate? So you look at him within the academic milieu. There are some relationships that he has with other professors, but there's nothing of substance there. In fact, he'll teach for decades and decades, and yet there's almost well, we've been teaching together for so many years. Maybe we should, get the wives together again and, have a dinner or something. And the very things that you think would bring a person satisfaction, such as your defense for your doctoral dissertation and the possibility of publishing, a work and being, appreciated by your academic peers, or even, and he has this kind of little relationship on the side, which might be the only expression of intimacy and passion that you see out of William Stoner. That's completely hijacked and wrecked because of the possibility of scandal. His daughter is turned away from him by his wife, who's become vindictive and hostile towards him. In fact, you could almost say that the only passion that is within this story is a hostility towards William Stoner. You have academic professor who is almost exceptionally antagonistic towards William Stoner, wanting to, if he could, completely derail his career. You have a wife that is hostile towards William Stoner and who is vindictive and angry and intentionally is turning the daughter against his father. You have a daughter who basically is she's almost like a female version of William Stoner in the sense that she's easily almost guided and invited to not show any type of passion and expression. In later years, she does certain things manipulatively in order. She's like that definite culmination of the two together. You have this almost kind of, it's almost like I'm in the current of what's going on around me, and I have zero abilities to, dictate my own path and pursuits. And then you have this almost vindictive nature of the mother, and then you see it together in the daughter, where she, and the choices that she makes kind of puts her in a scenario where she is the recipient of her own actions and yet somehow pulled along into a current of, like, how did I get here? So it is an interesting and very almost disheartening and sad story. You keep thinking maybe something amazing is going to happen, and it doesn't. So the reality of the spoiler is, we watched an entire life of this guy, William Stoner, who, for all intents and purposes, yes, is somewhat of a mystery and revered a little bit by the student body at the institution he teaches, is somewhat acknowledged to be an interesting professor and one who, is certainly deserving of, being raised in honor before his peers. But because of the scandal and the unrest that's constantly around him, he never really fully falls into his own. And part of it is there is no ultimate passion in his life. And then as he's dying, and it's almost like accidentally, I realize I now have cancer and I'm dying, which is not funny. It's just so tragic. And, you almost have to laugh because, like, could it get worse? And the answer is yes. I mean, he literally will die alone. His wife, who continues to be callous and unsensitive, you would think on his deathbed that the wife would come in and have words of affection and I'm going to miss him. But it's almost like, yep, he's dying. He won't be with us much longer. And then she's gone. There's this idea of almost pages in a book, in a story, and is it finished? Is it an unwritten, unfinished story? And then he dies, and that's the story. And you would think, how could this be an amazing and a great book? And I'm just telling you is that you keep thinking about this book because this is the great fear, I think, for everybody on the planet. What if I don't find love? What if my life is meaningless? What if all of my efforts are acknowledged, and I find adversity at every, kind of fork in the road, and I'm not seen, I'm not loved, I'm not supported, there's no passion. What if I'm unremembered? What if, I'm not wanted? And I think that ultimately he is that. He is unloved and unwanted. And the one glimmer of love is this particular student whom he's going to help along with this dissertation. They fall for each other. It is the only expression of passion, and almost kind of seeming, dreaming together of what could be. And the reality that all of who I am will completely be dismantled. The scandal is potentially too much. So that is annihilated, that relationship, and the final glimpse of maybe a sentimental nod to William and his influence and impact in a person's life would be her dedication in the foreword of her book to him, and potentially the honest conversation that he finally gets to have with his daughter. And that's it. And I think maybe at the end of this, you could ask the question, what matters in my life? What is important? And really, ultimately, if you don't have family, and if you don't have affection and friendships and passions, what kind of a life would that be? And then it's almost like, here it is. That's what you read. I loved this book. And I loved it because it provoked in me all of these feelings and more. And I'm trying not to be insane and give everything away, but if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, if you've read it, let me know what you think. If you've not read it, I'm not sure why you're watching this video, but there's so many spoilers. And yet they kind of give you that a little bit in this Goodreads, analysis and synthesis here for the book. On the back jacket. So he encounters a succession of disappointments. Yes, he does. So anyway, if you've read this, what do you think? If you've read books like this, what do you think? And or maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed something in here that really stood out to you. Let me know what it is. I'm a big fan of this kind of analysis and processing. So thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate your liking and subscribing and spreading the word. And I love this stuff. I hope you do too.